the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the LIEDAHO4 case. And you know, I've been doing a little bit of investigating, digging into some backgrounds on a certain individual. And I'm not sure if, I know I'm not going to put this video public for at least a little bit. I'll keep it members only, because y'all know how I like to really go through and vet some things out before I really put it out there. But I've found some very, very interesting things that correlate on this particular person, and it's undeniable. And I've got to do a video, because I got to document it in, in a video and also in my mind. And y'all know, if you've seen the video that I did on the FBI tip, that was no doubt Farley. I mean, there's no doubt that was Farley calling in a pseudo tip. He's trying to reach out to his handler, Ryan O'Neill. And in that tip, it led me down the path to find the other documents that talked about the mysterious death of an individual in Lewiston that they had med-flighted to Spokane. And when the Spokane medical examiner got a hold of him, he realized that the injuries that he had were very suspicious, took his DNA and sent it to the investigators in the unaliving case for the LIEDAHO4. And as we dug in, some folks out there were able to locate who it was, and it was a guy named Nicholas Mowich. Now, as I have really dug into Nicholas Mowich, I found all the signs and even more that suggest that Nicholas Mowich could have possibly been one of the alivers in the case. And I'll go through my usual methods of connecting things with, somebody that I'm looking at to other aspects. And wow, do they line up? Let me go through some of the stuff that I found, and it's kind of crazy. All right, so I always start out with this, because in the end, this is the beginning. We've got the group up in, operating out of Western Washington, known as the Aryan family, led by Jesse James Bailey. We focus specifically, though, on the Gill cell, which is known as the Omerta cell. And we know the crossover occurs between them and the Aryan Knights of Idaho. And they're mainly out of Boise, but of course they're all over Idaho, just like the Aryan family is mainly out of Seattle and Tacoma, but they're all over Washington. But it's this group that traffics between each other. We know that things happened, and these are the guys that called this thing down. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Now, when we dig in a little deeper, though, I've named some suspects in this case for quite some time. We got Mr. Farley, which I don't know if he was an actual contributor or just the lookout running security. I've had my eyes big time on Leonard, which this reminds me of a video I did long ago for my guy Geo, where I read an article about an inmate. But when one inmate named Tyson hollered BITCH at the accused murderer during a recent weekday, Kohberger barely flinched, turning towards him with a menacing stare without breaking stride as he proceeded down the hall, according to one mate who watched it happen. All right, so when we go to doc number 460 in the Idaho State Police docs, it's interesting to me that this is going to be Farley and Leonard making statements to the ISP after the arrest of Brian. And because they were sitting in jail with him, if y'all remember. And as we go through this, and again, this is on March 1st, and it's going to talk about the FBI Investigation Task Force Officer Gideon Roberts. And he interviewed Tyson Farley and James Curtis Leonard at the North Idaho Correctional Institute regarding their interactions with Brian Kohberger. Both Farley and Leonard have been housed at the Latah County Sheriff's Office jail with Kohberger after his arrest. The interviews were conducted separately and were audio recorded. All evidence turned over to the MPD. And we know it's Leonard and Farley because we know he was in jail with Kohberger at the time. And we know that this right here is Farley because he's age 44, born in 1978. We know this one is Leonard because he's age 39, born in 1983. And what did they say? Oh, after being advised of his Miranda rights, confirming he had not been ordered to talk with us, advised of the purpose of the interview, and the interview would be recorded. I don't know if this is Farley or Leonard, provided the following information. He could remember the exact date, but he believed Kohberger had been placed in their pod a few days after New Year's Day. After arriving in their pod, Kohberger immediately sat down and watched the news about his arrest, watching multiple channels that were covering the story. Kohberger said, "Wow, I'm on every channel." Yeah, so this is Leonard and Farley. You know, you can take anything they say with a grain of salt. Most of it, though, seems to be probably true. Kohberger was very quiet, and it was very awkward having him in the pod. Kohberger was highly intelligent and analytical, always trying to figure out what you were doing, but didn't know common knowledge things like the difference between two muscle cars. So, you know, this is how the brains of, Leonard and Farley are going to work. And they're thinking common knowledge things is, how muscle cars are built and what they are. Kohberger's eyes were creepy, I guess, but other than that, he seemed like a pretty normal guy. He didn't talk to Kohberger very much, but when he did, their conversation was casual, small talk, never about Kohberger's case. Kohberger would use 3 standard-sized bars of soap per week due to his hour-long showers and excessive hand washing. So you can bet that's probably true. Kohberger's hands were red from the amount of hand washing. Well, we know to this day his hands are still red because he's washing his hands. I was housed with Kohberger for about 3 weeks in total before he was transferred. Kohberger told him his favorite movie was American Psycho with Christian Bale. Now, you can bet that's probably some BS. Detective Schweike and I interviewed, wonder if that was Leonard. So now we're going to go over here. This is probably Farley. Schweike and I interviewed Farley regarding his interactions with Kohberger. What follows is not intended to be an exact transcript of the interview. For further detail, revert to the audio recordings. After being advised of his Miranda rights, here's the following. He was housed with Kohberger from early January to February 15th. So this is I don't know, it could be Leonard or Farley because they were both held until their sentencing. Kohberger enjoyed watching the news about his case unless it began talking about his family or friends, at which point he'd change the channel immediately. As time continued, Kohberger stopped watching the news related to his case almost completely. Kohberger analyzed everything. He wanted to know why people had preferences on anything. He psychoanalyzes everything. Now, this actually sounds pretty true because Kohberger does have a deep interest in knowing why criminals think the way they think. And we know that from a lot of the evidence in the case related to his, his conversations with people actually in prison. They talked about his case sometimes, but never Kohberger's case. So Kohberger's getting there giving them advice on their cases, but never Kohberger's case. And see, this is where it's always got me messed up because I always thought Farley snitched on Kohberger, snitched on Kopacka, which in turn led to Kohberger. But now that I've seen all this evidence, I don't think Kohberger was ever even in the mix with any of these guys. I think Farley actually spilled the beans on Mowich. And let's see, he spent most of his time on the communication tablet with people, typically his mother, who he told to retain an attorney after he had seen something on the news. Kohberger washed his hands excessively, using 3 bars of soap per week, which caused his hands to always be red. He showered every day and wanted new bedding and clothes every day. So, this sounds like it lines up. Kohberger showered every day, Kohberger was very smart, easy to get along with, but was hard to talk to because he talked over him due to Kohberger's vocabulary and topics of conversation. So, it was a little bit more of an educated conversation than either Leonard or Farley was used to. Kohberger also talked about his education a lot. Kohberger loved baseball, with the Yankees being his favorite team. Well, I hope he's lying there because as a diehard Red Sox fan, because, I was born in Massachusetts, you automatically have to be a diehard Yankees hater. Koberger also liked to watch court TV and was very interested in the Murdaugh trial. Once the interviews were complete, I transferred the audio recording to the disc and placed it into MPD evidence. Why wouldn't Koberger be a Pirates or a Phillies fan? I mean, he's Pennsylvania. So, I don't know. I think that's got to be a lie there. But I think it's just interesting that the interviews were done with all the people in the jail they could have done them with. They do them with Farley and Leonard. There's reports that they actually investigated Leonard. So he should have appeared in these docs, and he hasn't. And then we now know, based on everything that we see and know, there is no doubt that Miss Molly helped in setting this thing up. Now, through a lot of things that we've looked at, I've come to the conclusion that there is a female definitely involved in the actual unaliving, and the one that I think is most likely to be that female is the one that has all the other connections, which is a young lady by the name of Miss Braun. On November 16th, 2022, Gill, according to the FBI record, leaves out of Seattle, headed towards Ellensburg, Washington, and head also towards Ellensburg, Washington, where they meet up in the middle. The next thing to uncover is the Ellensburg, Washington connection. Now, but what if I told you in almost every scenario that we look at, there's always something missing to tie it all together. But there's always this one thing missing to tie it all together. What if I told you this one thing keeps appearing in every single area that I look at? When I go up to Spokane and I try to put in the missing pieces there, coming from Spokane down back to Moscow, the second known trafficking arrest for Mr. Farley that happened in August of 2023, you can see man facing felony charges for Whitman County after hundreds of F-pills found in his vehicle. Where was this from? Colfax. I go to Colfax. This question mark pops up again in Colfax. It's unfreaking believable. But the most telling part is the last. And that is the obscure Ellensburg connection.
174, check in. Negative, not yet. 174, the white Chevy four-door pickup swerving on the highway, almost hit the car head-on, just turned into A&W. 18. 174, it's a female driver who's currently getting gas. 1839.
I'll be out on that vehicle, Washington Plate, dated 35176 points.
174, you have some air in your mic.
Washington Plate, dated 35176 points.
1839.
Moscow 174 vehicle is driving away from me. Driver admitted on license, headed southbound on Main, passing louder now.
Copy, vehicle driving away southbound on Main.
16 around.
116 en route, 1841.
76 in traffic.
1841.
I'm behind that vehicle, just ringing the red light, attempting to initiate a traffic stop.
Copy, 174 attempting to initiate, 1841.
That'll be 76, I'm out with him. We're headed west on Blue River Drive.
176 west south, Blue River Drive.
Hey, is in pursuit? Affirm.
Traveling in excess of speeds of 60 miles per hour.
More with their possible 8004. You can reconnect to 8004, it's just on license.
Seven six is terminating pursuit.
Moscow 116, if you let Washington know they were headed on to Sand Road.
Copy, headed on to Sand Road.
7416, can you meet me at ARP? Affirm, I'm parked on the south side. Moscow 116, if you didn't already, can you create a case for eluding as well?
Yep.
Moscow 116, what was the RO depot on that vehicle?
Vehicle's registered to a James Mackey at a Pullman.
10-4.
Moscow 172.
172.
Units are clear, no report. Moscow 172, myself and 67 are out of service.
1847.
Moscow 176.
176.
You can assign the eluding to me, and you can close it out. Report taken.
1849.
Okay, so here's the narrative from a couple of cops. You know how they all write their own narratives about this event in the police report. One of them responded to the area of A and W. So in reference to this 2006 white Chevy Silverado driving erratically, it says, when I pulled into the parking lot, I observed the vehicle parked near one of the gas pumps. So this truck had been driving crazy, caught the attention of, pedestrians or police or whatever. And then this woman pulls into a gas station. This officer pulled up behind the vehicle and got out. And unfortunately, I guess they didn't tap their body cam video on. I would have loved to have seen this part because they only describe it to me. They didn't give me videos of this actual action. But the officer got out wearing the full MPD patrol uniform. They're like, look, this woman knows I'm an officer. When I walked up to her vehicle, there was a blonde woman, approximately 35 to 40 years old, in the driver's seat. It says she looked at me and began to drive away. And once we see her record, we'll see why she was running, even though it was a dangerous thing to do. She turned around and she stopped the vehicle, rolling down the window. It says, I went to speak with her and advised her my reason for speaking with her. She told me, her window was very dirty, and she pulled in to just clean her window off. She could not see very well through her window, which made her pull into the gas station. Now, mind you, this is February, so it's, cold. We'll see the ice. They're going to talk about the icy roads. The officer says, I requested her information to make sure she was licensed, and so I could document that I spoke with her. She told me she did not have her license on her, so I requested her name so I could check her driving status and make sure it was good. Now, she responded by saying it would not be good. So it says the unknown female put her head down and said, this can't be happening. Then she said out loud she was going to drive away. This woman's bold. She put the vehicle in drive and sped off at a high rate of speed. She should have just given herself up at this point.
So just to reaffirm, that white truck that she was driving was the same truck that Molly here was driving when she got her DUI. We all watched on video cam that belongs to her boyfriend, Jimmy. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You don't say. What about in Colfax? Who could be the Ellensburg Connect? Now we've got a new player thrown into the mix, and it's a guy that has passed away named Nicholas Mowich. And as we go through this, there's possible other people on the perimeter. Possible other people that may have even had a little bit of a role in doing some surveillance and coordination, such as people we've thought about due to relationships and possibly even relationships we've never really connected, and not because of any fraternities or anything like that, which I'll get to in a video. The reason that this one is even appearing in here is because of his possible relationships, but I'll talk about that. Then we've got our new guy, Nicholas Mowich, and my goodness, does he check the boxes. Now, Mowich, we were able to locate because of a strange tip provided by Farley to the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, who gave it to Dollinger or Gilbertson, and he immediately turned it over to Farley's handler, which is Special Agent Ryan O'Neill. And the information that he took down was very suspicious. You could tell some was true, some was fiction, which led us to strange autopsy results in the actual court docs. And what's interesting about that, what did I have here on November 20? By the way, his autopsy and the circumstances around his death were very interesting. Just as a reminder, he was found wandering, according to the autopsy notes in the police report, around November 15th in Lewiston with strange injuries. They took him to the hospital in Lewiston, and it was so serious they med-flighted him from that hospital all the way to Spokane, where he passed away on November 19th. The medical examiner in Spokane performed an autopsy on the 21st, noted all these suspicious things around his death and the suspicious cuts on him, took his DNA, sent it to the LIEDAHO4 investigators on November 23rd. But when I look at his residence history, it's interesting. He grew up, spent most of his life in the area of Hoquiam, Washington, ever how you say it, which is going to be on the coast here, just west of Seattle. And then he had an address down in Lewiston, and it said he was currently residing in Genesee. All suspicious locations for addresses, I think you would agree. But then when I look at his arrests, and I'm not going to do any of the like municipal traffic violations, he's got a bunch of those as well. But his arrests start back in 2001 in the Hoquiam Municipal Court. So 2001, 2002, these are more than likely just, misdemeanors, municipal court. And then you continue down to 2006. We got more municipal court. 2007. Then we've got our first, looks like, actual arrest. He's over in Superior Court in Grays Harbor. That's right there on the coast east of Seattle. And then back in municipal court. Wait a minute, 2004, I guess, was the first here in Grays Harbor, an actual charge. And then he had one Grays Harbor in 2005, and then Grays Harbor in 2007. So these are actual charges. It's harder to look up what kind of charges those were in the Washington docs without doing FOIAs. But we can see that he had these are likely felony arrests in 2004, 2005, 3, and 2007. And then as we continue to go through, see, 2007, municipal. Here's another Superior Court major charge, 2007 in Grays Harbor. Then we get to 2007, Superior Court in Callum County. That's going to be getting closer to Seattle and Tacoma. 2009, that's municipal court. Again, we got a charge in Grays Harbor in 2009. Grays Harbor in 2010, and I'll tell you exactly what these are. These are major charges. And then we've got 2010 again in Grays Harbor, 2010 again in Grays Harbor. So 4 more arrests. One of these included, at least one of these, maybe more, included actual prison time in Washington. And then he filed an appeal on that prison time, actually won it, and got released in 2012. But 2010, he's definitely in prison. Let me show you why I say that. I found this unpublished opinion right here, and it was on a criminal case that was appealed by a person in prison, the Court of Appeals of the state of Washington. And it was State of Washington versus Nicholas J. Mowich. It was our guy. And you can see a jury found Nicholas Mowich guilty of attempting to elude pursuing police vehicle under a former code. On appeal, Mowich challenges the sufficiency of the evidence proving that the officer was in a uniform and the vehicle was equipped with lights and sirens. So he's saying that when he was arrested, that cop did not have his uniform on and the vehicle wasn't equipped with lights and sirens. And apparently this is how the law should work, as it did in this case, because it turned out he was right. However, we learn some facts as we figure out if he's right or not. It says on February 26, 2010, then Officer Jeremy Mitchell of the Hoquiam Police Department was on patrol at the Indrison Boat Launch in Grays Harbor County. A tan or gold-colored passenger car pulled up next to Mitchell, and he recognized the driver as Mowich. So this wasn't any first run-in for them and Mowich. Mowich accelerated, spinning the car's wheels on the gravel before taking off at a high speed. Mitchell activated the emergency lights on his vehicle and pursued Mowich. Officer Mitchell momentarily lost sight of Mawich's car when Mawich sped around a corner. When Mitchell turned the corner, he saw Mawich's car had collided with a parked car. So he flew around the corner, hit some parked car, causing it to hit a telephone pole that almost fell over. So whether he wore a uniform or not, I mean, he ran from them and hit a parked car trying to get away from them. But at trial, Officer Mitchell testified that he was on general patrols the night of the incident. Report of proceedings, Mitchell testified that after Mawich sped off, he activated emergency lights, overhead lights. Finally, Mitchell testified that after Mawich's vehicle collided with the parked car, he made contact with Mawich and took a statement from him. On March 15, 2010, the state charged Mawich by amended information with theft of a motor vehicle, attempting to elude a pursuing police vehicle, and possession of METH. A jury found Mawich guilty of attempting to elude a pursuing police vehicle. Mawich appeals his conviction. So he got hit for stolen car, running from the cops, and possession of METH. Now, Mawich appealed this, and because of the officer's error, this is probably how things should have worked. In accord with Hudson and Fussell, we reverse Mawich's conviction and remand directions that the trial court dismiss the charge with prejudice. Retrial following reversal for insufficient evidence is unequivocally prohibited, and dismissal is the remedy. So they overturned all of his charges based on this appeal, and they released him from prison, and this would have been in 2012. Okay, so we know in 2012 he was released from prison in Washington State, where he could have absolutely, been around people of the Aryan family persuasion. And then we know that he went down to Lewiston, and he was immediately arrested, still in 2012, in Asotin County, which is just over the line from Idaho into Washington. In 2012, you can see in September and in December, we've got more charges in district and superior court. But then he must have just stayed in Idaho strictly after that for a while, because we know then in Idaho, he began getting his charges there. In 2012, he was arrested for a misdemeanor battery charge. Nothing too serious. And then in 2014, he was arrested for a misdemeanor assault charge. A little step up from battery. So it's kind of starting small and it's getting bigger over the years here. And then again in 2014, he got his major charges, where he was charged with domestic violence, an enhancement for being a persistent violator, meaning he had been arrested so many times and actually been incarcerated, and attempted strangulation. Pretty serious there. So we're talking a couple of felonies there in 2014. And you'll notice right here the probation violation, because he was put on probation for this after he was sentenced to county jail stays. But probation violation on his probation for these was a felony probation violation, like is supposed to happen, that never happens in these other cases. And this was on May 30th of 2019. We'll come back to that because that's the one that got him sentenced. But once again, in 2014, they put him on probation. And then in 2016, he did violate that probation by driving without privileges, and he violated his no contact order, probably to the domestic battery no contact order he had on him. But they didn't put him in prison and violate his probation for that. What happened was he went back over to Asotin County and he caught two more charges. And with these two more charges that he caught in 2018, they probably put him in jail for several months. And then when they released him from jail, then Idaho violated his probation for those charges. And you can see that's in May of 2019. So he probably spent about 11 months in the county jail, got out. Idaho violated him for those charges. and then they sentenced him to the penitentiary. And you can see he was sentenced to the penitentiary since June 26 of 2019. And it says determined at 2 years, indeterminate at 3 years, but you can see details. The court amends sentence. He got IDOC stay of 2 to 5 years. And he spent 3 of those 2 to 5 years in the Idaho Department of Corrections, which is a big red flag, because that would be where he would have hooked up with the Aryan Knights. And you can see that he was released from the Idaho State Prison for this 2 to 5 years. He must not have been a model citizen, because they didn't let him out in 2. They let him out in 3. He was discharged June 12th of 2022. So June 6th of 2019 to June 12th of 2022, he spent 3 years and 6 days in the penitentiary on a 2 to 5 year charge. So again, doesn't look like a model citizen to get that much time on a 2 to 5 years. So he's probably ganged up and affiliated. So when I put all the pieces together for him, we've got 13 actual arrests, not including municipal arrests, in the state of Washington and the west of Seattle, one of them actually in Tacoma. 3 prison stays that I could find in the penitentiary in Washington. And he's a violent offender, battery, assault, strangulation, METH, stealing cars. I can't even tell you what most of the other arrests were for, because I can't look them up without FOIAs. But then I know in Idaho, he's got 4 arrests and 1 prison stay for 3 years. And he just happened to be released from the penitentiary in Idaho just, July, August, September, October, less than 5 months before the atrocity happened. We've got a very, very strong candidate here as one of the unalivers. This is from the FBI documents, says investigators note. In this conversation, it was clear that Gill and Slocum were conspiring to kidnap another individual on 12/12/2022, and Slocum was going to transport that person to Michael Warren's residence in Shelton, Washington. It's also believed that the reference to making sure that person did not have a phone was to prevent that person from calling for help, or their phone being used to track their location later on. It was later learned that the person that was the intended kidnapping target was Gregory Beers, who resides at blank blank in Tacoma, Washington. They weren't going to kidnap him. They were going to get him. They didn't want him to have his phone because they didn't want him to track their location, because they were going to ease off to a funeral the next morning. And just to get another visual on who we're talking about, obviously we're talking about Gill up here, Michael Slocum, and this is Gregory Beers over here. So get a better look at Gill, Slocum, and then Beers. Now you'll notice Beers has this tattoo on his neck. It's actually a fresh one. He got that probably a couple of months before he actually got arrested in March, and it says loyalty on it. And I believe he might have done that out of respect for their fallen friend. I don't think it was their desire for him to be unalived. I think the Knights may have done that all on their own. But check out who visited Nicholas Mawich's funeral. And right there, you've got Gill, Beers, and Slocum all sitting in the back. Now here we get a better look at Slocum right here as he's walking up from viewing Mawich. And he's going to sit down there, and you'll notice when he throws his arm up here, if he does it, all the tats. There's Beers. Sits down right in between. Oh no, he's going to keep on walking and talking. And you can see Gill, when he turns around, you can see his mustache and his little half goatee there. Look at the tats on Slocum's arm there. Now, that silver car right here may not seem significant because it left out, at almost 5:30 and then came back about 5 minutes later. It may end up being one of the most significant things in this entire case, because as we go through the docs now, we know that there was at least an attempt to identify all the vehicles that were coming in and out around this thing during these times. And when I first read this one, I was thinking they were running down a lead on an Elantra, but now I realize that they were actually talking about this silver car right here. It says on December 16th, interesting date there, 2022 at about 11:45 a.m., Detective O'Hara and I interviewed blank at MPD regarding his silver blank Idaho registration and his activity on November 12th and 13th, 2022, and he provided the following information. He confirmed the above noted vehicle was his, and no one else used or had access to the vehicle other than his father in Lewiston, who has a spare key. But he knew his father didn't use the vehicle. See, the way they're asking this, they know this vehicle drove out right here because it's on film. And they bring him in and they say, look, did you drive it? And he's like, no, I didn't go anywhere. And he said, well, does anybody else have a key to your vehicle? He says, the only person that has a key to my vehicle is my father in Lewiston. But he knew he didn't drive it, like he didn't expect his father to be around there to drive it. He went to bed around 11 to 12 a.m. because he had to work at blank the following morning at 9 a.m. He didn't note anything unusual until he was alerted by the vandal alert of the unalivings while he was at work. His roommate blank was also home on November 12th. Blank's phone number was blank and he didn't know any of the victims or have any contact with them. I attempted multiple times to interview blank, but was unable due to his failure to contact me. So I believe this vehicle right here is this young man's car. The only person that had access to a spare key was his father in Lewiston. So I did a little bit of investigating, and I went to our main suspect here, Mr. Mowich, and went to his obituary. And you can see that he was, his funeral service was on December the 3rd. But when we go to who he was preceded in death by his father, and survivors include his mother, his fiance, his brothers, sisters, and his children. Now, Nick here had quite a few children. The first one's name is Jackson. As well as many aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews. So I started looking at some of his children, and one of them, Jackson. It's kind of weird that his name's not Jackson Mowich. So I got to looking, and there is a Jackson who is a University of Idaho student. You see Jack right here. And funny enough, when you take Jackson and you take his initials of JS, and then we go back to the police report where they found an apartment that had blood in it, and the person's name was JS. Well, it's likely now that that actually was not Jack Showalter. It was actually. And I did some looking, checking his addresses, and I couldn't find his address, but I did find the address of who you would think would be his father, Matthew, but it turns out Matthew adopted Jack. Jack's actually Nick's son, but Matthew adopted him and I guess raised him, and he's from Spokane. And Matthew has one of his addresses listed as Queen Road, Unit 43 in Moscow. So it's quite obvious that Matthew here rented Jack's apartment for him there in Moscow on Queen Road. And that JS who they found blood in his apartment is more than likely Jack Snyder. And his father that lived in Lewiston was Nick. That means that Nick here, according to Jack, drove his car that morning without Jack's knowledge because he had a spare key to it, and we just put this thing together. Like I'm saying, people out there don't know that we've got this thing cracked, but they will soon enough because we're still working on it, and we're not going to expose all of this until the time is right.